Hi, I'm John Feldt, and this is the Blue Water Outlook Weekly Water Outlook for March 17th, 2013. Well, I said last week we'd sort of find a mix of precipitation with western areas being somewhat wet and eastern areas being dry. And here's the past 7 days' rainfall. You can see the orange and yellow shades are around 2 inches of rain. The green's about an inch of rain, and blue's only about a half inch of rain or less. And once again, it tapered off from west to east. Now, the upper parts of the ACF basin right here received a fairly significant rain. The northern Chattahoochee, upper Chattahoochee River, about an inch to an inch and a half of rain. Most of the Chattahoochee received around an inch of rain, but then it tapered off. The Flint River sort of mixed here. And then as we got over the eastern parts in southeast Georgia and eastern Alabama, eastern parts of the Carolinas, generally only about a quarter inch of rain or so. In Florida, it was fairly light with only about a quarter inch of rain, a couple dots of about a half inch here and there. Now, the above normal rainfall in this image shows up in blue. The normal is yellow, and then below normal is the red shaded. And you can see that tapering off of rainfall, more significant rain off to the west, and then tapering off to the east. Now, snow is really not all that significant anywhere in the Southeast U.S. If you look closely, you'll see in higher elevations there are some pockets of snow. But I thought this was sort of interesting to point out here the current snow water equivalent. And the maroon here is the heavier amounts, the more significant 3-inch or more. And one of the interesting paths, tracks this year has been this path from northern North Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, part of Michigan. And what's interesting here is it's really been confined. It has not gone extended further south. Even though it's significant snowpack in here, it's confined to a small area. Look at this here, from North Dakota to where water equivalents are 3 inches or more to zero snow at all. So sort of interesting pattern as far as snow goes over this season. Now, this is a 7-day average stream flow. It's not the longest stream flow, such as a monthly stream flow. It's not the shortest, such as an instantaneous. But this shows a 7-day average stream flow, and it points out that the Savannah River remains well below normal. That's that area in brown. If we go further off to the west, we see most of Georgia and Alabama is normal, and that's been due to the recent rainfall from mid-February into the early part of March. And then we get in further to the west of that area up into Mississippi, and actually it's above normal rainfall. Now, the U.S. Drought Monitor, we've seen some significant improvements over the last 30 days. The D1 to D4 is 23.6%. Not a whole lot of change week to week because it has been a fairly quiet week and not just only modest rain in that area. But look, 3 months ago, 49.1. So we've almost cut it in half over the last 3 months as far as the overall coverage, and from the intensity of D3 and D4, we've gone from about 10% all the way to 0. Now, I'm going to talk about this a bit because this pattern that has been very active up until about a week ago looks like it's not going to be so active as we go forward through the rest of this month and then maybe even into early April. Now, the soil moisture anomaly change here shows very clearly where that tremendous improvement was. That's at 90% is the dark green, and you can see where soil moisture has improved very tremendously over parts of Georgia, South Carolina, southern Alabama. And as much as that has improved and brought some indicators back up to normal, there's still a need for more rain in that area. And I wanted to sort of point this out in a different way. Short-term drought indicators are parameters that can change fairly quick upon receiving heavy rain, and that might be smaller tributaries and upper soil moisture. So if there is heavy rain, as we saw over the last 30 days in that region, you can see very significant improvements. And that area now is in green and blue, which is actually showing above normal or improvement in that area. But just as important are long-term drought indicators, in some ways even more important. If we look at Georgia, in that area that's in blue, a positive, we see negatives are yellow for the long term. And a way to look at that is that the subsoil is still dry. Now, there's been a tremendous improvement. That fire has been brought down to just sort of simmering, but it hasn't been put out. Until we really bring those lower soil moisture levels back up to normal, the upper soil will continue to dry and percolate into the lower soil moisture. So we've seen improvement. Now, if we go up further to the west across parts of Alabama and Mississippi, we see the long-term drought indicators are positive with the greens and blue. That's in much better shape as we get into the green up period and maybe even into the summertime. So I would like to see at least normal, maybe even above normal this time of year heading into the green up of later in spring, which isn't all that far away. Now we're going into an interesting pattern here. This is the Arctic Oscillation. It's been negative much of the winter, and the ensemble forecast for the AO is forecasting a very significant dip to some of the most negative readings so far this winter. Matter of fact, the green line puts it in perspective of the forecast, which is red, later this week into next week, how significantly negative that's going to be. And you might remember that when we get a negative phase Arctic oscillation, that brings it reduces the Arctic vortex strength, and it allows cold air to sink over the upper Midwest and parts of the eastern U.S. And over the Southeast U.S., it can tighten up thermal gradients that could enhance precipitation. Now, that's not going to be the typical case, and I'll tell you the reason why. This is a forecast of the jet stream. The green lines are the jet stream flow. The blue are the anomalies of height, and what that means are the blue dashed lines are colder than normal, lower than normal pressure. And I think with this strong and negative Arctic oscillation is the cold air is going to be pushed so far south that that thermal boundary is going to be further south than it has been in the past, and we're going to end up with a fairly stable pattern over most of the region. Matter of fact, here's the 6 to 10 day pattern, and what you can see here is this looks very similar to the last image, and that's saying that we're getting into more of a stable type pattern as we round out winter and get into early spring. And that's not always the case, as this time of year often brings very strong systems. Now, we are going to have a transition from the warmer air in place to the colder air, and with that transition there could be some severe storms and some rain early this week over the Southeast U.S. But look at the tracks of these lows. They're north of us, and with the tracks of the low north, that'll probably inhibit much inland transport of higher levels of moisture. And with the system moving very, very fast in that jet stream, there will be some rain, but I think it's going to be generally modest in amounts and not last all that long. Now, I mentioned that pattern of cold air. Here's an example. Coldest air is here in the white, up in the upper Midwest. Warmer air still over the southeast U.S. along the Gulf Coast. And you can see this cold air punches much further south than the last time we had that negative AO, so the enhanced precipitation is going to be further south as well. This indicates that pattern over the next 7 days. It looks like there will be one band of rain early this week, and then another maybe towards the end of the week. That one's a little bit more iffy. So right now it looks like more modest rain. I think the pattern is going to be similar that we saw in the past, with the heaviest amounts over the western parts, Alabama and Mississippi, and then gradually tapering off. With that thermal gradient, it could be heavier along the Gulf Coast as well. I mentioned this pattern is very stable. This is April, early April. If I would subtract the rain from this first system, you would see even less here, because most of the area in purple is from this rain over the earlier part of the week. It looks like it's going to be a fairly quiet pattern. Matter of fact, I want to bring to your attention this area of blue right here. This is all the way out there early April with, not much more than an inch of rain. And this time of year, when you normally do get a lot of rain, we're in one of the wetter months, and many of these states over the Southeast U.S., the wettest month, I would expect and I would have hoped for more rain. That area is very dry, so it looks like the Savannah is going to continue. The Savannah River Basin is going to continue on the rainfall deficit side, especially central areas and eastern parts of the Carolinas as well. And even further west doesn't look all that exciting after this first system, even further west. So the takeaway points for this week's briefing: there will be a rain event early with the possibility of some severe weather. It looks more scattered type severe weather. Another system maybe a week from now, but in between, overall, it looks like a fairly quiet, stable pattern. And I think most of the Southeast U.S. will start to, again, gradually be losing ground with rainfall deficits and drying upper soils after a more active period of February into early March. We'll be updating this briefing in another week on Sunday. Thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you again about a week from now.